If you've driven Highway 301 in South Carolina, you've probably seen this building, but did not know the backstory. Well, here's the backstory. At the beginning of the Highway 301 business creation boom of the early 1950s, Frederick and Emily Griffin were two of the many older folks who were ready to dedicate their later years to a new career. That new career? Opening tourist-driven businesses like motels and restaurants and stores along this new Highway 301. Now, Frederick had done what most men his age had done. He had done his service in World War II, after which he went to work for Union Carbide as a sheet metal worker in upstate New York. His wife Emily worked during this time as well, and she had worked in food and bev, like with restaurants and whatnot, and so they had a good little life going. But in their mid-40s, they decided it was time for a change. And around 1950, this English-born, Canada-reared couple would move again. This time they'd take the typical Yankee migration pattern, though, and move from New York south to, well, you guessed it, Florida. But when they got to Florida, they found out it wasn't quite their lane, so they decided to move back north. Emily wanted to return back to Niagara Falls, while Frederick, though, opted for the warmer environs of the South. So during their travel along Highway 301 back north, house, trailer, and tow, the couple found a restaurant for sale in Jessup, Georgia. Y'all, this is what they dreamed of. Their own little business along Highway 301 in a nice little town in Georgia. Emily had worked in hospitality, so this was it. This was their chance. But even though they were initially so stoked at the prospect, even to the point that they literally waited in town for the restaurant owner to return from vacation, the owner said, well, no, I don't want to sell after all. Well, there went that idea. But pay attention, folks, because this is the great takeaway of the story. It's out of disappointments like this that great things come. They may have been deflated, but they were not defeated. With a hefty dose of English grit, the couple made a fortuitous decision. Frederick placed his finger on a map and pledged to stop wherever it landed. Well, that spot came out to be near Orangeburg, South Carolina. And arriving in the area, they immediately found a property along Highway 301 just south of Orangeburg. Frederick and Emily bought the property, and the seeds of this highway icon were born. Frederick was only in his 40s, and he had worked with his hands his whole life. So he worked odd jobs, and Emily pitched in by putting her old food and beverage experience into working at the Glass House restaurant down 301 in nearby Vandenberg, South Carolina. And Frederick constructed their home as well as cabins on the property. Now, why these cabins, you might ask? Well, originally they envisioned a business that they wanted to go into as a tourist court. And although the tourist court idea didn't shake out, the couple appealed to their English roots by considering a tea room. Well, as you can imagine, a tea room wouldn't exactly work along an American highway in 1950. But they settled on the quintessential American equivalent, a coffee shop/diner. Frederick used his past metalworking skills to not only construct the new diner with his own hands, but also the shop's most distinguished feature, a 6-foot-tall, 250-pound coffee pot which was mounted above the front door. Curiously, though, the couple opted against the dinner menu. Instead, their establishment would serve both breakfast and lunch before tweaking their menu even more by narrowing their options to breakfast only. As the breakfast menu became the primary focus, though, this foreign-born northern couple would serve up southern staples like pancakes, sausage, eggs, and grits to many a traveler, with Frederick particularly noted for scrambling up some, quote, mean eggs. Ironically, this brainchild project of an English couple originally envisioning a tea room would be noted for its excellent, carefully brewed coffee, though. It was this coffee that would become the diner's calling card for many a traveler to stop during the early days' travels. But with a 250-pound coffee pot over the customers' heads as they walk in your door, you kind of have to have good coffee. And they did. The diner would operate, much of it from repeat traveler business, for 29 years during the heyday of Highway 301. Eventually, though, the completion of I-95's South Carolina stretch in 1976 sounded the death knell of Highway 301 businesses. Despite this, the hardy couple was able to survive off of the dying highway and local traffic for another 3 years before finally closing their doors in 1979. But this New York couple had made their mark and became beloved members of the community while still retaining a hold on their roots. Even into her later years, Emily still held tea in her room at 4 p.m. sharp. And in an ultimate testament to just how beloved the couple became, her church family called her their queen. In fact, her church sisters managed to write to and persuade none other than the Queen of England to send Emily a letter. The couple passed away in the early 2000s, but to this day, their gravestone memorializes them as Mr. and Mrs. Coffeepot. So if you're ever out driving past the old Coffeepot diner on the now defunct old Highway 301, now you know the backstory.